Good evening, everyone. Welcome to my week 6 discussion post. I chose for this week to look at the 1925 Scopes trials, or the monkey trial. I found this to be a very interesting topic. Of course, I had no idea, no prior knowledge about a trial like this, especially with the fact that during the time and even after it was highly publicized. Um, so wasn't informed on it at all, but of course, with week 5 reading assignment, we had an article by Dr. David Minton, The Scopes Monkey Trial 80 Years Later. It was an article that informed us all, those who weren't already aware of it, uh, about the content of this particular case. Let us revisit the article briefly. The Scopes trial was about two arguments or two schools of thought, with one school of thought being the science of evolution, and the other thought being religious fundamentalism or creationism, which in fact is the belief that humanity was derived from God, that we were created by God, as many of us who are Christians would believe. According to Dr. Minton, the American Civil Liberties Union, the ACLU, was behind the Scopes trial. The ACLU became aggrieved over anti evolution bills that were being introduced in over 20 different states. The bills effectively would have banned the teaching of the evolution of man in public schools. The ACLU decided to pursue their case in the state of Tennessee, where the Butler Act had been passed. The Butler Act stated in part that it shall be unlawful for any teacher in any of the universities, normals, or all public schools of the state which are supported whole or in part by public school funds of the state to teach any theory that denies the story of divine creation of man as taught by the Bible, and to teach instead that man has descended from lower order of animals, which is essentially evolution, the theory of Darwinism, or the theory of evolution through animals. John T. Scopes was a high school teacher, math teacher who filled in on one occasion for a biology teacher for 2 weeks. Dr. Minton noted in his article, Scopes agreed to participate in the ACLU's test case. Subsequently, in July of 1925, Scopes went on trial for violating the Butler Act by teaching evolution. Although Dr. Minton noted that Scopes didn't actually teach evolution per se, from reading the article, it appears that the focus was more on the legality of the laws that were being passed, as opposed to the teacher himself actually teaching evolution. In this particular case, I believe, from what I understand, Scopes didn't actually teach evolution. He just, I guess, avoided it altogether. He wasn't a biology teacher. Ultimately, as many of us have learned over the past weeks, Scopes was found guilty of violating the Butler Act. But the Butler Act was repealed in 1967. And as it stands today, according to Dr. Minton, the theory of evolution, or Darwinism, is the only legal permissible explanation for the origin of man being taught today in public schools. William Jennings Bryan was a notable figure in this case. Obviously, he was the head of the prosecution for the Scopes trial. Although Bryan was a conservative Christian creationist, he was beloved, and he was well regarded figure on both sides. The Sun newspaper of Baltimore, Maryland, published an article discussing the Scopes trial. The article stated that Bryan was a champion of fundamentalism. The Watauga Democrat newspaper published an article in August of 1925 where Bryan was championed as a man for the people. Brown's work during the case was said to be the greatest work of his life.